Good morning, YouTube. Warbles on a lot here. Sunday, 10th of July, 2016. Preparing for the Outsiders and First Dog on the Moon.
Time now for Outsiders. I'm Barry Cassidy, and you're not. He so is. With us this morning, Catherine McGovern, Senior Associate, the Public Policy Consultancy, the Agenda Group. Parnell Palm McGuinness, Communications Consultant and Writer. You'll see her words often in The Spectator. And Dr. Stephen Mills, Lecturer in Public Management at the Graduate School of Government at the University of Sydney. Welcome, everybody.
Morning.
Morning.
Are we exhausted yet? With our long count? Why does it take so long?
I've got to get it right.
Oh, well, indeed. And this is, of course, not the end of it, is it? We've had one seat declared out of the 155 thus far, but the outcomes, Parnell, must be court-proof at the end of the day.
That's right, especially with the margins as tiny as they are. I think some of them down to 59 votes at the moment apart.
Very special people, those 59 are.
That's right, and very influential.
So, Catherine, I think we can probably say at this point that we're going to have a slim Turnbull majority.
Yeah, it certainly looks at this point as though that the coalition will win government, and then they'll have to manage the flow-ons of that in terms of policy, the Senate, minor parties.
There will be much to manage. For Bill Shorten's part, he's not giving anything up just yet.
It's likely in coming days that the Liberals will scrape over the line with a combination of a Prime Minister with no authority and a Liberal Party at war with itself will see Australians back at the polls within the year.
Oh dear. Stephen Mills, does that feel likely to you?
Look, I don't think we should start thinking that an election later this year or within 12 months is the most likely option. I think what all the major parties and the minor parties are saying is that they want to make this parliament work. And there's every chance, I think, that as we saw in 2010 with the Gillard government, that they will make it work. Nobody wants another election.
It's interesting, isn't it, Catherine? I mean, the tone is sort of generous and conciliatory all round at the moment. The independents who've hitched to the Turnbull cause have been, saying we want to make this work. Nick Xenophon saying we want to make this work. Malcolm Turnbull, unsurprisingly, saying we want to make this work.
Well, I think it's pretty unsurprising that everybody does want to make this work. This is their jobs. I mean, if you actually think about it from that perspective. But actually, the Australian people have had the chance to vote. This is what they've said. The independents have been pretty careful not to overpromise. They're not saying we're going to support the whole government's agenda. They're actually saying we're wanting stability and giving Malcolm Turnbull the opportunity to try and run a government.
Stability, Parnell, that's an interesting word. Are we going to get that?
I doubt we're going to get that, given what the Australian people appeared to have voted for is a mishmash of single policies, which can't be a real surprise, given that that's what the two major parties also offered up. Very little by way of vision and a lot by way of individual policies to vote on.
Well, that's an interesting point. And Stephen, this is, in terms of the incoming government, I mean, a lack of stability will depend on trying to push a lot of stuff through the Senate in particular. But is this a government which has a lot to push through?
Well, this is the problem, isn't it, Jonathan? That really the idea of a mandate suggests that the government was elected on a platform or a set of promises. And really the mandate that Malcolm Turnbull has secured is pretty limited. I mean, he's entitled to hold a joint sitting of Parliament for the ABCC legislation. He's entitled to put his 2016 budget measures and presumably some 2014 budget measures in there. But beyond that, there is not actually a big legislative agenda waiting. So, nor was it discussed in the election campaign. And so the mandate is actually pretty limited, I think.
The country, Catherine, of course, clamouring for that ABCC vote.
I wonder how many people actually remember some of that. But I think Stephen's point's correct. There's not a large legislative agenda there waiting to be pushed through. We don't have the UK tradition of party manifestos that are then expected to flow through into a legislative agenda in the same way. And most people in Australia probably have a relatively limited concept of actually what the full range of policies of any party that they voted for actually represent.
Do you think, Parnell, that people within the coalition, never mind the Australian public, will be happy with such a sort of a relaxed agenda?
No is the simple answer. The government thinks it's there to govern, and there is only a very small number of people within the Liberal Party who think that less government would be a good thing. So there is going to be a push to achieve something and a stand for something which is going to be translated into action during this next term, I think.
There'll be a bit of a push for control as well, won't there?
Sort of
ideological control.
Well, that's already happening and has been happening for some time. If it splinters, we'll end up with something along the lines of the Labor-Greens issue, when you have that side of politics no longer controlling any kind of majority, which is what we're seeing in all of the big parties.
Well, splintering it's interesting, and then a lot of the conversation on that topic is centred around this man, Corey Bernardi.
We had the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, say Pauline Hanson has no place in Australian politics, and yet she represents the views, or she reflects the concerns of many, many people. Whether she does that well or badly is up for others to judge. But you cannot dismiss the fact that so many people are worried about the things that she's talking about. Then we had, circumstances where the Prime Minister was happy to hold and promote his interfaith dinner, and was more happy to be pictured with Waleed Ali than with, the conservative base of the Liberal Party.
What do you make of that, Catherine? I mean, the argument is being put that Malcolm Turnbull turned against the more conservative base of his party, and that has cost him.
I actually think Malcolm Turnbull, since he's been Prime Minister, has tried to juggle the two different groups within the Liberal Party. And it's a difficult balancing act. In most Western countries, those two groups don't actually belong together in one party. Australia is abnormal in that regard.
How weird are we?
Yeah, exactly. And how sustainable is it in the really long term?
What do you think, Stephen Mills? Is that a sustainable balance? I mean, John Howard legendarily did this with aplomb, and was an expert in giving everybody their voice and their sense of inclusion, but at the end of the day, tying the thing in a bow and proceeding as a unified force.
Yeah, I think it's a really important big shift that we're seeing in politics today. So we've had traditionally these major parties. One of the things that the major parties used to do really well was to aggregate diverse views within the same party structure. Howard used to refer to the broad church of the Liberal Party. And Labor has always had its left and right factions as well. And the parties used to be quite good at managing all of those divisions, giving everybody a moment in the sun, sharing out the jobs, and then getting to Parliament with a single united view, which they could then put up against the other party. Now we're seeing all of that fragmented. And in a hung Parliament situation in particular, any one person who wants to speak out, like Corey Bernardi is doing, obviously he's a senator, but I mean in the reps in particular, a hung parliament really empowers individuals on the governing side in particular to muck up and, break ranks. And this is perhaps where we might see instability lie.
The possibility of a similar outcome with a very slim majority of one or two seats. Outsiders here on Sunday Extra, Stephen Mills, Catherine McGovern and Parnell Palm-McGuinness. Parnell, might it not in fact be a more honest and better thing for Australian party politics to have a distinctly conservative group separate from the Liberal Party?
Well, in some senses, yes. Although I wonder if our country is even big enough to accommodate quite that much politics, if you want. Where we do need to have a pay attention is, like in Australia, like in the rest of the world, what we're seeing is particular groups like Pauline Hanson coming out because politics has shifted so much to the centre, or perhaps it's not politics, but society has shifted so much to the centre that we're not allowing conversation around certain problems which concern voters at the fringes. So the election of Pauline Hanson, just like the Brexit vote and Trump in the States, show us that we need to allow a certain demographic to have their say.
What do you think of that, Catherine? I mean, there's no question that it's a minority view, and yet it is one which, by definition, is excluded by that majority in the centre.
Yeah, if you look at Pauline Hanson, she's got 450, 500,000 votes this election, first preferences. And I agree entirely with Parnell that we actually need to allow those fringes from whichever side they are to talk. They're actually quite a substantial majority if you add them up. And people have the right to have their views listened. This is a democracy.
Getting a view across, it was a theme taken up by Arthur Sinodinos this morning on ABC TV's Insiders.
Get Up targeted various people around the country, the most celebrated case being, of course, Andrew Nikolic in Bass. I think they poured something like $500,000 into that seat to unseat him. And what Corey is saying is, well, if Get Up is going to take that sort of targeted approach, we on the right should be doing the same thing.
But Get Up was spawned from outside the party. Isn't the danger here that any new movement would be from within the parliamentary party, and that would have to be very carefully managed?
Look, what he's talking about is a group that I think straddles the party and outside the party as well. And I think Corey's in a good position to be able to balance those considerations.
Taking politics, Parnell, outside the party? That's an interesting thought.
We have that already. There are organisations like the IPA. What we don't have in Australia so much anymore are strong voices, strong organisations like that on the Conservative side. The H.R. Nichols Society, for instance, hasn't been a big voice recently. So what you are getting is the left having really built up that kind of force and the right having just left it to wither for whatever reason, whether it's overconfidence or just ineptitude.
Will the right continue to wither outside of Parliament? Will they grow strong and will a million voices bloom? That may be the story of our next couple of years. Thanks to our outsiders this morning, being Catherine McGovern, Senior Associate at the Public Policy Consultancy.
Okay, I'm assuming first Moondog's about to happen.